In the heart of Brookhaven, Georgia, a city filled with joy and celebration, a moment of happiness turned into a tragedy that no one saw coming. A newlywed husband, in a moment of rage, killed his wife just hours after they posted their wedding picture online. What was it that pushed him to commit such a violent act? Was it an uncontrollable burst of jealousy, or was there something darker at play beneath the surface? On the surface, the world saw a perfect couple, two people bound by love, sharing their happiness with the world. A newlywed couple, basking in the glow of what was supposed to be the start of a beautiful future together. But hidden beneath the smiles and the wedding vows was a storm waiting to break. Hours after they shared their joyous wedding picture on Facebook, everything changed. The picture, a moment of celebration, a snapshot of their happiness, was to be their last. The truth behind that moment of joy was far more complex than it appeared. What drove a man, a husband, to kill the woman he had just promised to love forever? Was it really the wedding photo, the symbol of their union, that set him off? Or was there something inside of him all along, waiting for the right trigger to break it all apart? As the story unfolds, we begin to peel back the layers, unraveling the terrifying truth behind the act of violence that shocked the world. What had begun as the happiest day of their lives spiraled into something no one could have predicted. Was it the wedding picture that set him off? Before we dive deeper into this shocking crime, make sure you hit that like button. If you haven't already, subscribe to our channel for more gripping true crime stories. And don't forget to hit the bell icon so you never miss a new upload. Meet Jason, a man who had always dreamed of building a perfect life. His heart raced with excitement as he prepared to marry Sarah, a woman who brought joy and warmth to his life. Together, they had built a strong bond, or so it seemed. Their love story was one many admired. Sarah, an outgoing social woman, was thrilled to share their special day with the world. The couple was ready to begin their new life, but the dark undercurrents of their relationship would soon surface, leaving everyone in disbelief. Jason was a man who had always wanted the best for his future with Sarah, but something about their wedding day triggered a shift in him. Was it the joy of their special moment, or was there more beneath the surface? Sarah, like many people today, was eager to share her joy with the world. After the ceremony, she quickly uploaded a wedding picture to Facebook. "A new chapter begins," she typed, along with a beautiful photo of herself and Jason at the altar. The post was flooded with comments from friends and family congratulating them. But while Sarah saw it as a joyful milestone, Jason's reaction was something entirely different. As Sarah celebrated the new chapter in their lives, Jason's feelings began to shift. He was no longer seeing this as just a happy moment. He began obsessing over the attention Sarah was getting from a post. His feelings of control started to resurface, his mind swirling with possessiveness, jealousy, and insecurity. As the day went on, Jason's anger grew. What was once a proud moment had now become a point of contention. The comments and likes on Sarah's post made him feel inadequate, as if the world was paying more attention to her than to him. It was the start of something darker, a jealousy that slowly took root in his mind. Sarah, unaware of the growing storm inside Jason, continued to enjoy their special day. She noticed his mood shifting, but attributed it to the stress of the wedding day and tried to comfort him. But Jason couldn't shake the feelings of betrayal. Had Sarah's happiness been meant for the world to see, or had she taken something from him, too? His internal turmoil reached a breaking point. Did you see any red flags in the couple's relationship? What do you think might have been the tipping point for the husband? Comment below with your theories. And if you want to hear more true crime stories like this one, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next investigation. The tension that had been building for months, unnoticed by most, reached its peak the night Sarah posted their wedding photo on Facebook. What should have been a moment of shared happiness, a couple's pride in their union, became the final straw for Jason. As the image of the smiling couple flashed across their social media page, Jason stared at the phone screen with growing unease, his grip tightening on the device in his hand. He scrolled past the comments of well-wishers, the likes steadily increasing. each tap of the phone screen amplifying the anxiety building inside him. It wasn't the praise he feared, it was something else entirely. For him, the picture was a public declaration, a declaration that she belonged to him, that they were now one, forever bound in a contract that only he controlled. His mind raced through emotions he'd been repressing for months, feelings of inadequacy, jealousy, and a crippling sense of losing control. This wasn't the celebration he had imagined. The idea of sharing Sarah with the world, of everyone knowing their business, enraged him. He couldn't explain why, but in that moment, as the notification pinged and another comment came through, his anger exploded. He confronted Sarah, a quiet voice growing in intensity. "Why did you post this? Why did you have to share everything with the world? You think everyone needs to see us like this?" Jason's words dripped with frustration, but Sarah, still glowing with happiness from the wedding, didn't understand the storm inside him. Sarah responded with confusion in her voice. "Jason, it's just a picture. It's our wedding. It's meant to be shared. Why are you upset?" She walked toward him, her hands raised in an attempt to calm him, unaware that each step she took only further ignited his fury. She had no idea that this simple act, something she thought was innocent and celebratory, was slowly unraveling everything they had built together. She had no idea that Jason, the man who had professed his love for her countless times, had been harboring something far more dangerous inside. Jason's body tensed, his jaw clenched as he turned his back to Sarah. His breathing became erratic, shallow. He tried to steady himself, but every passing second felt like an eternity. His mind was a whirlwind, filled with thoughts of betrayal and humiliation, feeling as if he was losing something irreplaceable, something he couldn't control. The sense of betrayal had festered for months, but now it was undeniable. Her image, her smiling face in that wedding photo, was not just a picture to him. It was a symbol of everything he felt slipping away, beyond his grasp. The confrontation began as words, hurtful, sharp words, and it quickly spiraled out of control. Sarah, trying to remain calm, asked, "Jason, what are you talking about? Why are you being like this?" "It's just a photo." Jason turned toward her. His eyes, usually so calm, were now wild with emotion. The veins in his neck bulged as he shouted, "Don't act like you don't know. This isn't just about a picture. You don't get it, Sarah. I gave you everything. And now you go and share our most private moment with everyone." In that moment, Sarah realized the depth of Jason's anger. But even then, she couldn't grasp the full extent of what he was capable of. The emotional distance between them, the cracks in their relationship, had only been growing wider. She didn't see the danger, couldn't see the storm that had been building beneath Jason's calm exterior. She had only thought they were adjusting to married life, to their new reality. But Jason had already stopped listening. He was beyond words now, beyond reason. Every moment of Sarah's innocence and joy in their relationship felt like an attack. The more she tried to defend herself, the more his anger mounted. His face reddened, his fists clenched, and his breathing quickened. It wasn't just the wedding picture that set him off. It wasn't just the attention she was receiving from others. Something deeper had been simmering, and it was finally bubbling over the surface. Jason could no longer hold back the anger that had been building inside him. Every word she said, every gesture of comfort she attempted, seemed to make his blood boil more. He began pacing back and forth, his mind racing with irrational thoughts. How could she do this to him? Did she not see the damage she had caused by sharing this photo? Didn't she know what it meant to him, to their relationship? He saw it as a betrayal, a declaration of independence he couldn't handle, a sign of weakness that he could not tolerate. She had no idea that the man she had married had already crossed a line that would forever change both of their lives. In a split second, without any warning, Jason snapped. He pushed her away from him, the force of it sending Sarah stumbling backward. "Stop it, Sarah. Just stop," he spat. But she wasn't backing down. She didn't know what was happening. She just wanted him to calm down, to explain why he was acting this way. Jason's mind had turned completely dark. He couldn't think straight anymore. His breath was shallow, his chest tightening. With one last burst of emotion, he grabbed her, his hands tightening around her throat. The image of the wedding picture flashed before his eyes again, mocking him. She had humiliated him in front of the world, exposed their private moments, and now, in his mind, she had to pay the price. In an instant, he had completely lost control. What had started as a verbal argument over something trivial escalated into a violent, brutal act. Jason was no longer thinking of the consequences, no longer thinking about what he had done before in their relationship. It was as if all his restraint, all his self-control, shattered with the sound of Sarah's soft cries. The moment of violence was swift and devastating. Jason, his rage clouding his judgment, committed an act he could never take back. The image of Sarah, struggling in his grip, blurred in his mind as the anger overtook him. Her pleading words were drowned out by the pounding in his ears. And in the midst of it, something snapped within him, and he could no longer see her as his wife. He saw her only as the source of his pain and humiliation. In a violent flash, the life Sarah once held so dearly was ripped away from her. And in that one horrific moment, Jason Williams' life was also destroyed. We've reached the turning point in this tragic story. But the investigation into this crime is just beginning. Tap on the like button if you want to hear more about the shocking aftermath. And comment below if you believe his actions were driven by jealousy or something more. Remember to subscribe so you won't miss any of the shocking details yet to come. When the first responders arrived at the scene, they were met with a situation far beyond the ordinary. The house, once filled with the warmth of newlywed bliss, was now a scene of terror. The police officers secured the perimeter, ensuring the crime scene was protected and undisturbed. Inside, Sarah Williams' lifeless body lay in the living room, a chilling testament to the violence that had erupted within hours of what was supposed to be the happiest day of her life. The officers entered cautiously, their eyes immediately scanning the surroundings for signs of struggle. They found the house in a state of disarray, though there were no signs of forced entry, suggesting that Sarah knew her killer. Likely, she had let him inside. The layout of the house seemed quiet, almost eerily still, as though time had stopped in the moments leading up to her death. The forensic team quickly set to work, their hands moving meticulously as they collected evidence. They documented the bloodstains and carefully preserved any DNA evidence that might shed light on the crime. A slow, methodical process unfolded as they examined the body for any injuries that would help clarify the cause of death. Initial reports suggested blunt force trauma, but there was also evidence of defensive wounds, indicating that Sarah had likely fought back before she succumbed to the violence. The sound of radio chatter echoed in the background, the only noise in the otherwise silent home as detectives began their preliminary investigations. They noted every detail, from the condition of the home to the placement of objects around the room. But nothing prepared them for the shocking realization that came when they analyzed Jason's behavior. He wasn't at the crime scene when the officers arrived, and witnesses reported that he had been acting strangely in the hours before Sarah's death. The investigation into Sarah's death quickly focused on Jason. A detailed examination of his social media activity became a crucial part of the investigation. The wedding photo that Sarah had uploaded on Facebook just hours before her murder now took on a disturbing significance. The seemingly innocent photo of a happy couple, radiant in their joy, stood in stark contrast to the horrific violence that had followed. Detectives unearthed Jason's posts around the same time, some of which were filled with passive-aggressive comments and disturbing messages about ownership and control. In one of his posts, he had commented under Sarah's picture, "You belong to me. No one else needs to see this." This comment, when put into the context of the events that followed, painted a picture of a man deeply obsessed with control, his possessiveness reaching a fever pitch. The social media accounts, once a symbol of their wedding celebration, had now become evidence against him. As the investigation deepened, it became clear that the underlying motive wasn't just jealousy over the Facebook photo, but a growing sense of ownership that Jason felt over Sarah. The detectives uncovered text messages between Sarah and her friends in the days leading up to the wedding. Sarah had been feeling increasingly isolated, and Jason had pressured her to limit her contact with others. He had even gone so far as to make her promise not to post pictures of their private moments on Facebook unless they were approved by him first. These texts seemed to reveal a pattern of controlling behavior that had gone unnoticed by those closest to her. But the most damning piece of evidence came from the phone records. Witnesses and phone data showed that Jason had been calling Sarah multiple times in the hours before the murder. They spoke, but what exactly was said remains unclear. However, the sequence of events was becoming increasingly evident. The man who had once been so trusted, so beloved in his community, had transformed into someone whose need for control and dominance had overshadowed the very love he professed to have for his wife. The shock waves of Sarah's death rippled through the community, leaving friends and neighbors struggling to comprehend the unimaginable. Jason, the man they had once admired, the man who had stood before them in church as a paragon of virtue, had now become the object of their disbelief and horror. The couple had been viewed as a modern-day fairy tale, two people who had found love later in life, united by a second chance at happiness. They had shared their joy so openly, their wedding pictures splashed across social media for the world to see. But now, that picture of perfection had been shattered. People began questioning how something so horrific could happen to such seemingly normal people. They remembered Jason as a quiet, reserved man who always kept to himself, who rarely exhibited the kind of possessiveness that would lead to violence. But as more information came to light, the darker aspects of his personality began to emerge. The very traits that had once made him appear calm and composed were now seen in a different light. His need to control, his obsession with Sarah, and his fragile ego became apparent to everyone who knew him. Neighbors and friends of Sarah spoke to the media, expressing their shock and disbelief. Sarah's best friend described her as a woman who had been filled with hope, someone who had finally found happiness with a man she believed she could trust. The comment from one friend echoed the sentiments of many. We never saw this coming. No one did. But what haunted them most was the fact that Sarah had been so close to her family and friends. Yet no one had suspected that Jason's actions were building towards something this violent. The signs had been there, perhaps buried beneath the surface, but they had been too subtle for anyone to notice until it was too late. As the detectives dug deeper into Jason's life, they uncovered more troubling details. They spoke to Jason's colleagues at work, who described him as highly protective and sometimes overly possessive of Sarah. His actions, once seen as normal concerns of a loving husband, began to be reinterpreted as signs of control. One of his co-workers admitted that Jason had often made comments about Sarah's online presence, particularly when it came to sharing personal photos or updates. He didn't like her putting herself out there, the co-worker said. The police also examined the couple's financial records, which showed a growing rift between them. Jason had recently made large, unexplained withdrawals from their joint account, and there were signs that he had been using the money to exert more control over Sarah's activities. As detectives connected the dots, they found that Jason's controlling behavior had escalated to the point of obsession, and the event that had pushed him over the edge, the wedding photo, was the tipping point. What started as a seemingly innocent act, sharing a wedding picture on Facebook, had ignited a violent response from a man who could no longer tolerate the feeling of losing control. The detectives pieced together the final moments of Sarah's life, including her frantic calls to friends and family, which revealed the depth of her fear in the final hours before her death. The investigation is now underway, and the details are getting even more chilling. What do you think the police will uncover next? Drop a comment and share your thoughts. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. You'll want to stick around for the surprising twists that are coming up. The investigation into the tragedy deepens as detectives begin to uncover the emotional and psychological factors that may have contributed to Jason's actions. What drove this man, once thought to be the ideal husband, to murder his wife over something as seemingly trivial as a wedding picture on social media? As the pieces of the puzzle fall into place, a more complex picture of Jason emerges. It becomes clear that he was not just a man acting out of rage in a single moment. He was a man consumed by jealousy, control, and perhaps deeper psychological issues. In interviews with his colleagues, it becomes evident that Jason had always been someone with a desire to control his surroundings. He often exhibited signs of possessiveness, particularly when it came to Sarah. At work, he would frequently ask her to dress in ways that suited his preferences, and he discouraged her from interacting with male coworkers, citing insecurities that seemed to stem from a deeper, unresolved issue. As investigators dig into his past, they uncover traces of narcissism, a constant need for admiration, control, and validation. Jason had grown up in an environment where attention was scarce, and the few relationships he had were marked by an overwhelming desire to control those around him. This need to control extended to Sarah, a woman he saw not only as his wife, but as an object to possess. His lack of trust in her, combined with his fragile ego, created a powder keg that only needed a small spark to ignite. That spark, it turned out, was the innocent wedding photo. As the investigation continues, detectives learn that Jason's mental state had deteriorated in the days leading up to the murder. Sarah's decision to upload their wedding picture to Facebook triggered something in Jason. While to many, this might seem like an innocent act of pride, to Jason, it was an affront to his need for control. He believed that the public display of their love was something he had not approved of, something that made him feel exposed and vulnerable. In the moments leading up to the murder, Jason's mind was likely racing with thoughts of betrayal. His jealousy was consuming him, and he became convinced that Sarah was distancing herself from him, seeking validation from the outside world. The reality of his isolation and his perceived loss of control pushed him over the edge. When Sarah uploaded the wedding photo, it wasn't just a picture. It was a symbol of everything he feared losing. And in that moment he snapped. The forensic psychologist hired by the prosecution begins to analyze Jason's behavior in the hours before the murder. Interviews with neighbors and friends reveal a man who had been on edge for days, his mood swings becoming more noticeable. One neighbor recounted hearing loud arguments coming from Jason and Sarah's home the night before the murder. Jason's erratic behavior was becoming increasingly difficult to ignore, but no one could have predicted the violence that would unfold. Could this crime have been avoided? What role did the husband's emotional state play in this act of violence? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time. We have 115 true crime stories lined up, and you won't want to miss a single one. The news of Sarah's death reverberated throughout the family and the community, leaving devastation in its wake. Sarah's parents, who had raised her to be a compassionate, loving woman, were now faced with the heartbreaking reality that their daughter's life was taken by the man she once loved, her own husband. Her mother could barely hold herself together as she recalled memories of Sarah's kindness, her bright smile, and her genuine love for Jason. She always believed in him, her mother said tearfully. I never thought he could do something like this. But it wasn't just Sarah's parents who were left in shock. Her friends, too, struggled to make sense of the tragedy. They recalled the many happy moments Sarah and Jason shared in the early days of their marriage. They remembered how they used to talk about their dreams, how they would laugh and share moments of joy. Sarah's best friend, who had witnessed their wedding day, was particularly devastated. It didn't make sense to us, she said, wiping away her tears. They seemed so happy, like the perfect couple. I never saw this coming. Jason's family was no less affected, but the question on everyone's mind was how did they not see the signs? Jason's family members had witnessed his emotional struggles and had seen his temper flare in the past, but never did they think it would lead to murder. He was a loving father, one family member said, voice trembling. But I guess there were things about him we never fully understood. It's heartbreaking, truly. The community, too, was in turmoil. The couple had been pillars of the local church, and the people around them had trusted them. How could the husband of a well-respected woman, who was known for her kind-hearted nature, commit such a horrific crime? People who had seen the couple as role models were now left grappling with the disturbing truth. We all thought they were the perfect couple, a neighbor said, staring into space, clearly in disbelief. How could this happen in our community? How do you go from posting a wedding picture to something like this? The emotional impact rippled throughout the small town. Friends and family were left picking up the pieces of their shattered lives. The once vibrant couple who had promised to build a life together now had their future tragically altered forever. Losing a loved one in such a tragic way affects not just the family, but the entire community. How do you think they will cope with this devastating loss? Leave a comment with your thoughts, and if you want to see how this story unfolds, be sure to like and subscribe. More true crime cases like this one are coming your way. The courtroom was filled with a somber energy as the trial of Jason Harper began. The public was eager to learn what his fate would be, as the case had become a tragic and shocking event that tore apart not just a marriage, but a community as well. The prosecution presented their case, arguing that Jason's actions were premeditated, driven by jealousy and a severe emotional breakdown that had been building over time. They highlighted his controlling behavior, his obsessive jealousy over his wife's social media post, and the violent confrontation that followed. The prosecutors contended that while Jason may have been overwhelmed by emotion, it did not justify the brutal murder of his wife. They painted a picture of a man who, despite his outward persona as a caring husband, had deep emotional and psychological issues that led to the fatal act. On the other hand, the defense team attempted to argue that Jason's actions were driven by an emotional crisis, exacerbated by his overwhelming jealousy and feelings of betrayal. His mental state, they claimed, was severely impacted by the pressure he felt, both from his relationship and from the seemingly innocuous wedding picture that spiraled out of control. They suggested that Jason did not plan the murder, but acted in the heat of the moment, his judgment clouded by the shock of his wife's actions. The jury deliberated for hours, with many feeling the weight of the situation. They had to consider whether the crime was one of cold calculation or an impulsive, emotionally charged outburst. After a long trial, the verdict was delivered. Jason Harper was convicted of second-degree murder. The jury found that while his actions were driven by intense emotions, they were not premeditated, and he had acted in a fit of rage rather than premeditated malice. His conviction came with a sentence of 25 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 15 years. The courtroom was filled with a mixture of reactions. Some felt that justice had been served, while others were left wondering if the sentence was sufficient given the life lost. Despite the verdict, many questions remained unanswered. Could this tragedy have been avoided? Was there a better way for Jason to have dealt with his feelings of betrayal? Would the couple's relationship have been better off without the influence of social media, which had sparked the confrontation in the first place? Could Jason have worked through his emotional turmoil without resorting to violence? His behavior hinted at deeper issues, and many speculated that his emotional state had been deteriorating long before the wedding picture was uploaded. Was the stress of maintaining a perfect image online, compounded by the pressure of his marriage, too much for him to bear? Another lingering question involved social media. Was it the wedding picture posted on Facebook that triggered Jason's violent actions? While the photo seemed innocuous to most, it served as a symbolic breaking point in their relationship. The act of his wife uploading the picture, an innocent celebration of their marriage, seemed to him like a betrayal, as if she was flaunting their joy in public while hiding something behind closed doors. Could social media, in its all-encompassing presence, have played a more significant role in the demise of their marriage than anyone realized? We've reached the final verdict in this case, but the lingering questions remain. Do you think justice was served? Was the sentence fair? Comment below with your opinion, and if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. And if you've enjoyed this story, don't forget to like the video to help others discover this story. We've got 115 more shocking cases just like this one coming up.